In this section, we are going to talk about cells. We're going to be talking about their organelles. We're going to be talking about cell division, and that specifically includes mitosis and cytokinesis. And we will delve into the very exciting activity of protein synthesis. It's a very important process for the body. When we are going to be looking at cells for this section, we're going to be looking at a generic cell. So you'll see diagrams that look a lot like this, and these generic cells have pretty much every organelle that you need to know about. Cells are actually the smallest living unit in the body, which you probably already know. They're about 0.1 millimeter in diameter, and they couldn't actually be examined until the microscope was invented in the 17th century. Cells are the building blocks of all plants and all animals. All new cells have to arise from the division of pre-existing cells. And they are also the smallest living units that are going to be able to perform all vital physiological functions. Each cell is going to maintain homeostasis at the cellular level. So each cell is a little independent unit, which is going to be able to react to both internal and external changes. In addition, these cells have to interact and coordinate activities at the level of the cell in order to maintain homeostasis for the organism as a whole. Also remember that all cells are going to be descendants of a single cell, specifically the fertilized ovum. At fertilization, the zygote forms, and that fertilized ovum is going to contain the genetic potential to become any type of cell. The first cell divisions are going to create smaller portions of cytoplasm, and regional differences in that original ovum cytoplasm means that there will be different compositions of cytoplasm in the resulting daughter cells. So, because there are cytoplasmic differences that affect the DNA in each of the daughter cells, that will cause specific genes to either turn on or turn off. And when you talk about genes, you're talking about protein synthesis. The result overall is the specialization of cells. And that process of sort of gradual specialization is known as cellular differentiation. And depending on what those specializations are, you will have different tissues throughout the body. So that leads us to this. Most cells are specialized. Most contain organelles and will undergo processes that are common to all. All real cells have a nucleus, and all can undergo protein synthesis, with the exception of cells like erythrocytes, red blood cells. Red blood cells aren't really cells because they have very few organelles and they are also lacking a nucleus. And if you've ever seen a red blood cell on a slide or in a micrograph like this, you'll see they have that indentation in the middle, and that is because they are missing a nucleus. The fact that they have very few organelles and are missing a nucleus means that there is a whole heck of a lot more surface area for gas exchange, because basically all red blood cells are these little packets of hemoglobin that carry oxygen around the body. And because they lack a lot of organelles, they live very short, somewhat demanding lives. They only live about 120 days. That's a nice to know, not a need to know. I put these pictures up because this gives you 3 examples of different cells in the body. Skeletal muscle cells will be mostly actin and myosin, which are going to be these myofibrils, which will allow for contraction of skeletal muscle. The dark dots that you see sort of on the periphery of those lines are the nuclei, and skeletal muscle cells are multinucleated, and basically that allows them to act like a unit. So when you're contracting your skeletal muscle, you're contracting these skeletal muscle fibers. Muscle fiber is a fancy way of calling a skeletal muscle cell. And adipose cells, if you take a look at that, it just looks like a whole bunch of sort of weird little squiggly lines that are somewhat colored. Actually, what happens is the fat droplet pushes all of the cytoplasm to the periphery of the cell, and you can see some darker dots. Those darker dots are the nuclei. The adipose cell is mostly basically a fat droplet. I love the picture at the bottom, which is an osteoclast. Anytime you hear osteo, you're talking about bone. And an osteoclast is going to be a cell that will start to resorb bone, which will help maintain blood calcium levels, and therefore help maintain the appropriate mineral concentrations in the blood.